Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's theory webinar focusing on the regions of Austria, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland. I know it's a little bit strange to sort of pile those all in together, but in the essence of putting together compact presentations that are timely and informative, I think it works out pretty well. So today we're going to take a look first and foremost probably at Austria. We'll examine the DACs, as well as the regions that aren't DAC, of course, with the Wachau, the grapes that are important there, the wine region, the history of it, wine laws, terminology, things that you might need to know about those things, as well as producers, which I think are very important there too. And then we'll shift our focus to Switzerland and the Alpine wines there, and then all the way down to well, I say down, north to the UK, to the English wine regions as well. But we start here in Austria. Let me give you a quick map just of Europe to take a look, and we'll see here. You can see Austria kind of right dead center, landlocked. And then as far as the other regions we're going to look at today, you see Switzerland here to the west, closer to France, and then we'll look at UK too. Here's a decent map of the Austrian wine regions. You can see the four main regions here are what they call Weinbaugebiet. In the north, of course, all of them are to the eastern edge of Austria, which is interesting, I think. The Niederösterreich in the north, followed by Wein here, then Burgenland, and then the Steiermark. And we'll get into each of these individually. So winemaking here dates back thousands of years, but really saw a boost during Roman times when Probus repealed the ban on provincial viticulture. Here you'll find Trockenbeeren Schlesien wines that predate German counterparts by almost 200 years. 1526 really is the first mention of it. The third largest producer of wine in the world after World War II, but that wine business was crippled in 1985 with the antifreeze scandal. Now with some of the strictest wine laws in existence since then, quality is certainly resurgent. We mentioned those Weinbaugebiet, Niederösterreich in the north, Wein just south of it, the Burgenland, and then Steiermark. A little more detailed maps here are the one that you'll find on Gildsam here on the right, and then Wine Folly here on the left. Let's take a look a little bit closer too. You can see here as we look at Niederösterreich, the Danube River, of course, is exceedingly important as it cuts straight through that and through Wein region as well. And on the Danube, on the banks of it, you'll find probably the most important wine region, the Wachau. Around it, you'll also find Kremstal, Wagram, and Kamptal. And then just out of it, you'll find Weinviertel. Triesental is here on the southern banks. As you get further down here, you'll also find the Thurman region and Carnuntum. And then, of course, in Wein, most important DAC is the Wiener Gemixterstaats. As you look a little further, we get to Burgenland, you'll find Lake Neusiedlersee. I'm going to butcher that pronunciation every time that I try to say it, but you'll find Neusiedlersee and Neusiedlersee-Hugenland, as well as Mittelburgenland and Südburgenland. Let's take a zoom out on that, and then we'll take a look in a little bit closer here to Steyr, where you'll find Pseudo-Steiermark, West-Steiermark, and Süd-Steiermark. I like the Wine Folly map a little bit better personally. This one's good. It shows the Danube. It shows the Krems, which of course cuts through Kremstal, and the Camp, which of course cuts through Kamptal. It also shows you two areas just around the Neusiedlersee Lake, known as Rust and Illmitz, that we'll talk about, which are very important for sweet wines coming out of Austria. And then you can kind of see here too the countries that surround Austria: Czech Republic, Slovakia, and you see Bratislava just right there, and then Hungary. And this is important too as we start to study Hungary, because the Sopron region in northwestern Hungary shares a lot of its winemaking styles and grape varieties with Neusiedlersee as well. So general statistics for Austria: Gruner accounts for almost a third of the total vineyard acreage, followed by Welsh Riesling, Müller-Thurgau, Weissburgunder, Riesling, and Chardonnay. You'll also find Zweigelt, which is a crossing of Blaufränkisch and Saint-Laurent that leads for red grapes, followed by Blaufränkisch, Blauer Portugieser, and Blauerberger. But white varieties really account for 2/3 of the acreage here in Austria. There's a three-tier system. You can start with Wein, which may label varietal and vintage. Then you have land vine, same primitive variety as the Qualitatswein, but may only use 3 broader appellations, which are Vineland, which includes Niederösterreich vine and the Burgenland, Steierland, and Burgland. Qualitatswein, which contains 2/3 of the total production of Austria. It has to pass a tasting panel and a chemical analysis shown by the proof number and the banderol, which is on the capsule. And all of these areas share a maximum yield of 67.5 hectoliters per hectare. As far as the legality of the KMW, or what is known as the Kloster-Neuburger Mostavage, these are must weights, very similar to what you'll find in Germany with the Product system. In this situation in Austria, the cabinet's level of must weight is not considered to be Product-Wein. So you'll see generic KMW requires to be here, Landwein, Qualitatswein, and then you'll get to your cabinet. When you get to Product, you have a minimum 5% ABV. Don't confuse that with Germany, where it's 5.5 for TBA and up. Germany's slightly higher at 7%, as we talked about last week. And then you'll see your different must weights here, all the way up to Trockenbeer and Auslese. One that you'll note that sticks out here that's different for Austria is Ausbruck. And as we mentioned, that city to the west of Neusiedlersee, Lake Neusiedlersee is Rust, and that'll be very important when we talk about Ausbruck here momentarily. As far as geographical features are concerned, of course, the Danube River, we've talked about Neusiedlersee, and then the Pannonian Plain, which stretches up north throughout the Niederösterreich. A quick aside on Austrian Sekt. There are 3 quality tiers for Austrian Sekt, which is considered Qualitatswein. Classic, all production methods are permitted for Classic. A minimum of 9 months lees aging. All dosage and colors are approved. For it to be labeled as reserve, you have to be utilizing the traditional method. Grapes have to be grown and vinified in Austria itself. And that's interesting to note because we talked about Sekt in Germany before. It has to be called Deutscher Sekt, or actually be German Sekt, for it to all be from Germany. If it's just called Sekt, a lot of it comes from other regions of the world. Same thing in Austria. To continue on with reserve, you have to age for twice the amount of time on these that you do for Classic. That's 18 months required. Vintage labeling is optional, but here you can only utilize Brut, Extra Brut, and Brut Natur, so very dry. There's also Grosse Reserve, and this is grapes from a single wine village with hand harvesting required. Here you extend the lees aging to 30 months, and they're not released until 3 years from the harvest. You'll find Brut, Extra Brut, and Brut Natur again as the only styles. And with Grosse Reserve, you can also have Grower, basically, which is called Hauer Sekt. And in Grower situation or Hauer Sekt, its capsule must include the words, I'm going to completely butcher this, but Geschützter Ursprung, Geprüft Qualität, meaning protected designation of origin and certified quality. Hope you guys got a good laugh out of that. As we move forward beyond Sekt, we're going to talk about the quality wines labeling systems. So Qualitatswein is broken down into 2 categories in Austria. It's the Product-Wein, we mentioned, 5% ABV, Cabinet, considered part of Qualitatswein and not part of Product-Wein. And then you have the DACs, which are Districtus Austria Controllatus. They're focused on dry wines. There's 13 of them currently. Actually, there may be more. I think we had a recent addition to that. I have to double check that. We start, though, in the north, Weinbaugebiet of Niederösterreich, with the Pannonian Plain and the Danube River, where most of the subzones are. There are 8 subzones. The Weinviertel, which we saw was further out northeast. This is Gruner only, 12% ABV minimum, no botrytis, no hints of wood. If you want to call it reserve, you can go to 13%, and you can have slight hints of botrytis and wood. Then you have Triesental, Kamptal, and Kremstal, all basically the same rules here. You get the Carnutum, the Thermenregium, and the Vagrum, and then you get the Wachau, which we're going to get to in just a second. I wanted to point out a couple of great vineyards for Kremstal and Kamptal, the Pfaffenberg, Langenloy, and Kamptal for Brundelmeier, and then, of course, Gobelsberg. Here's the Wachau. This image didn't come out nearly as clear as I really wanted it to, but you can see sort of the best way to break it down would be western, central, and eastern regions. And this is the Danube as it flows, and you can see a couple of places here is Unterleuden. You can also see well, we're going to get to it, but Nikolaev is one of the only grape producers on the southern side of the river itself. And then as you get further to the west, you'll find a little more botrytis here in the Spitzengraben. So important soil types for the Wachau are Loess and Gefüller, which is a gneiss. And these are on terraced slopes north of the Danube River that we talked about. Acklatine and Weissenkirchen is perhaps the best area, though the Spitz, known for botrytis, to the west, and that's where Hitzberger is. Steinfeder, Federspiel, and Schmaragd are sort of labeling restrictions within the KMW. They have to be dry. You can see that Steinfeder has a maximum 11.5% ABV with a minimum 15 Öchschel in the closer Neuburger Mostovaga. With Federspiel, there's a range for ABV between 11.5 and 12.5, and a minimum 17 Öchschel. And then Schmaragd is a minimum 12.5 ABV and then minimum 19% ripeness in the Öchschel. So slightly riper, fuller style for the Schmaragd. I think for those of us that call it, when it comes to deductive tasting, Federspiel is typically the wine that we're sort of focused on. Within Wachau, you'll also find the Vinea Wachau, which is a codex that's written by a local set of producers. It basically says there's no additives, no aromatization, which includes barrique, no fractionization like reverse osmosis. They have to be bottled in the region and vinified entirely from grapes grown in the Wachau. And it was founded in 1983. Its members have about 85% of the region's acreage, so a pretty big dose. As we get further south, we're going to skip over the vine region with Wiener Gemixtersatz for now and just go straight to Burgenland. One of the things that I find useful for helping to remember all the subregions or subzones, are naming. Usually what we use are acronyms and things like that. Here with Burgenland is fairly easy. It's Eisenberg, Leithaberg, Mittelburgenland, so all the ones with Berg in it, and then Nusi, Lursi, and Rosalia. This region is known for red and sweet whites. It's a hot continental climate near the eastern border with Hungary, and it's on the Nusi Lursi, a large, shallow lake. For Eisenberg, you have reds from Blau-Fränkisch. Leithaberg is really the first DAC to allow for both red and white. Whites are Gruner, Schard, Neuburger, and Weissburgunder, and the reds are Blau-Fränkisch with no notes of new wood. Mittelburgenland, also Blau-Fränkisch, no notes of new wood. Nusi Lursi, though, you'll find Zweigelt only, with both classic and reserve styles. And then the Rosalia DAC, which was formed in 2018, the new one, is varietal Zweigelt or Blau-Fränkisch with a minimum 12% ABV and a maximum 4 grams per liter of RS, and then dry rosés, which makes sense as it's called Rosalia. Sweet wines from the Burgenland, very famously Aloy Crocker for Gerhard Crocker's beautiful Bernau Schlese and Trocken Bernau Schlese wines is in Ilmitz, just to the east of Nusi Lursi. And then Rust to the west, you'll find Rooster Ausbruck, famous from Heidi Schrock. Production for Ausbruck really bears similarities to the processes of Tokai. It's richly concentrated botrytis-affected must is added to less concentrated must from fruit harvested in the same vineyard. And then the two are fermented together and then aged in barrel before release. Here you'll find that Ausbruck we mentioned earlier has a minimum 30 KMW. Traditionally, it was made from ferment, but Chardonnay, Muscateller, and Pinot Blanc may also be utilized. Steyr, Styria, mountainous region in the south of Burgenland with 3 subregions, the Südsteiermark, Weststeiermark, and Pseudosteiermark, all DACs. No Gruner, no Riesling, you'll notice. The Weststeiermark was absorbed with the previous DAC of Schulterlin, which makes still and sparkling rosé from Blauer Wildbacher. Welsh Riesling here is the most planted varietal. Sauvignon Blanc is starting to gain fame thanks to Manfred Tement. And then the system of the origin in Steiermark has 3 tiers: Riedenwein, Ortswein, and then regional vine. We mentioned sort of earlier the Wiener Gemixtersatz, DAC. These are blends of a minimum of 3 varietals with no single variety composing more than 50% of the blend. 3 varieties must make up at least 10% each. No obvious wood tones. They have to be Trocken in style. Single vineyard wines are not required to be Trocken. As far as vinification techniques for the area, we mentioned Rooster Ausbruck, but there's also another wine called Stroh wine, which is basically Baron Auslese ripeness, and it's a dried grape style. I wanted to throw together a little chart of grape producers from the area. We start in the Wachau with Prager, Pichler, Knoll, and Nikolaev. I mentioned Nikolaev being one of the only grape producers on the south side of the Danube River. Kamptal for Brundelmeyer, Hirsch, and Schloss Gobelsberg. The Kremstal for Malat, Nigel, and Stadt Krems. You'll find Leth in the Wagram. Here's a couple in Eisenberg, Krusler, and Wachter Owessler. And then in Mittelbergenland, you'll find Moritz, Heinrich, and Franz Weiniger. In the Carnutum, you'll find Glacier, and the Treisental, Uber, and Ludwig Neumeier. And then Wein, you'll find Weininger. Pretty easy to remember. Here's just a sort of outline for grape vintages from Austria. 2015, 8, 7, and 6 would be the ones you really want to look for. Ones you really kind of want to avoid: 01, 03, of course, that's scorching hot vintage, as well as 04, and then 10 and 14. And that's pretty much Austria. We're going to switch into mode for UK and Switzerland. It says Eastern Europe, but I went ahead and cut those out. We can get to that at some point. This is studying for Master Sommelier theory, so you have to have, of course, a little jab that says, because we'll get 2 questions on it on the exam. Here is Switzerland, and I think this is a great map that Quentin Sadler put up on his website. You can see here Geneva. I want to point out too that it's very important. You see France here, Italy, Austria, and then Germany. And Switzerland's really landlocked right in the center of those. I think it's important to note that right here, Lac Léman is fed by the Rhone River. The Rhone actually cuts out here, excuse me, empties into the lake, and then it forms a natural border between the Valais and the Vaud, which is pretty fun. You'll also find Lake Neuchâtel up here. And we'll talk about those wines a little bit further. And then down here, the Ticino area is very similar to Italian wines, a lot of Merlot based. Up in the north, very Germanic. Makes sense. It's close to Germany. So 4 French-speaking cantons that produce wine here: Valais, the Vaud, Geneva, and the Neuchâtel, which are further on the west side. There are 17 Germanic cantons in eastern Switzerland that produce wine. The lone Italian canton of Ticino, which we mentioned, focuses almost entirely on Merlot. 90% of the wine produced in Switzerland is consumed locally. There are 4 official languages for the area: German, Romansh, French, and Italian. Here you have a cool continental climate with high elevations and some pretty stunning terraces as well. French Switzerland, home to the Valais, which is responsible for about 1/3 of the total Swiss wine output. There's 9 Grand Cru sites here: the Confit, Chamoisson, Fouilly, Latron, Sion, Saint Leonard, Sierre, Ville de Sion, and Vitrose. And within Vitrose, you find the classification known as Amine de Vitrose, created in 2005. This helps you determine residual sugar in the wines. If there is 1 B, it sits between 0 and 8 grams of residual sugar on the label. If there are 2 Bs on the label, 9 to 25, and if there are 3 Bs, it is 25 grams or more of residual sugar. You'll also find in the area a local specialty known as Dole, which is a minimum combined 85% Pinot Noir and Gamay, sort of Passetout Grand S. You'll also have the Chart Grand Noble Confident CL. These are sweet wine classification created in 1996 with a minimum vine age of 15 years, 130 oak of ripeness with no chaptalization, and 12 months in oak. You'll find Marsanne, Petit Arvine, Amine, Sylvaner, Pinot Gris, and Payen. There's also, very importantly, very similar to what we find with the Zonda in Argentina, what's known as a Fion wind. And I didn't include the slide here. I have it on the Argentine slide, but it's basically a warm wind that blows down the side of a mountain. Here's the Guildsom map. I like the map, but I think it's not nearly as useful as just looking at the overall region. This one gets in a little closer, though, and shows you Lac Léman or Lac Geneva, as well as Neuchâtel. Here's Vaud here in the north, along with the Vouilly, AOC. There's a couple of other small ones, and then it shows you within the Lavaux, excuse me, the Grand Crus here. Perhaps most important is Désolé and Calamine. And we're going to take a closer look at Désolé right here. Pretty beautiful. You can see terraced. There's the Désolé. And I think it's also important to note that these channels that come down off the mountain for irrigation have a specific name here, and it's called Bisses, B-I-S-S-E-S. But you can see just how terraced this is. Pretty wild. Again, just to quote our sources, Quentin Sadler, great website. The Vaud is on the northern shore of Lake Geneva, really dominated by chasselas, or locally known as Dorin. We mentioned the Bisses for steep mountain channels of irrigation, 6 regional appellations, Lavaux, which includes the Grand Crus of Désolé and Calamine, La Côte, Chablais, Vouilly, Bonvillars, and Côte-Lourde. Regional AOC is 90% of the grapes must originate in the stated AOC. The regional AOC with mention of commune is 60% from that stated commune, and then Grand Cru has stipulates that 90% of the grapes originate in that AOC. The wine has a minimum must weight of 5 degrees oak, so higher than the required for the surrounding AOC region, and they have to be vintage dated. Here you'll also find selection of the Grand Noble, Vindage Tardif, and Vindu Natural, and those are authorized categories for the Vaud AOC. We have a question, I believe. Let's check here. Fion wind is a type of winds. I heard it's not a type of wind. We'll take a look at it. It's I think it's a type of wind. Yeah, not the name of it. It's a type for sure. If I wasn't clear on that, sorry. Okay, the Vaud Premier Grand Crus in 2012 that we sort of mentioned here. Premier Grand Cru status in the Vaud is awarded to individual wines based on Chasselas, Gamay, Pinot Noir, and Merlot. The production and bottling must occur in the Vaud. Vintage dating is mandatory. Hand harvesting required. All fruit for the wine must be harvested from the same terroir. Your minimum must weight here listed for Chasselas, 75, Oakshell, Gamay, 80. You can see the rest of them are around 85. Interesting to note, minimum vine age of 7 years. The planting density is 6,000 vines per hectare. That's actually pretty dense plantings when it comes down to it. And if all the criteria are met, wines can be presented to the Commission de Premier Grand Cru for a decision. In Geneva, that far west area, just by Lac Léman, where the Rhone still flows, you'll find 3 subregions: Mandement, Entre-Arve et Rhône, and Entre-Arve et Lac. And Arve, or Arve, is the other river that sort of splits off from the Rhone that doesn't head up into Lac Léman. Here, legally, you can use AOC Geneva or Grand Cru, which is awarded by, again, tasting panel, cuvée by cuvée, year by year. These are awarded to individual wines. And then you can use AO, which is basically an IGT labeling term. Grapes allowed in the Geneva area: Chasselas, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, Blanc, Müller-Thurgau, Pinot Noir, Gamay, Gamarette, Gare Noir, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. Neuchâtel, subdivided into 3 regions: Les Baroches, the coast, and Entre-du-Lac. Here you'll find more Chasselas, Chardonnay, which can be slightly sparkling or non-filtré specialty, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Müller-Thurgau, Gewürztraminer, and for red, basically Pinot Noir. Specialties of the area are Huile de Perdrix, which is a rosé of Pinot Noir. It originated here, but the canton actually failed to protect the name, and thus we find it in other regions of the world, specifically, I would think, for Vinsanto. And in Perdrix Blanc, still Blanc de Pinot Noir. I think you also see Huile de Perdrix as a name of one of the Agliorier wines, too. So you find it throughout different labeling throughout the world. Ticino is, as mentioned, sort of close to Italy, has a couple of subregions: Sopra-Ceneri, north of Monteceneri, important wine districts here listed, and then Sottoceneri, which is south of Monteceneri. Styles, you'll find red, white, rosado, and then Viti, V-I-T-I, is a Merlot-only award based on tasting panel. Swiss love tasting panels. That's what we can garner from this presentation, essentially. I think there was another question up here. Perfect. A couple of viticultural techniques just to be aware of. These are always fun when people are throwing around Switzerland study. Fletry is a strong sweet wine made from Pinot Gris. Sauvignon is a blend of Pinot Noir, Gamay, and the crossings of Gamarette and Gare Noir. And then a couple of different synonyms you might want to be aware of. We mentioned Dorin earlier for Chasselas. It's also known as Fendant. Marsanne is known as Hermitage. And then Pinot Noir is known as Klevner and Blauer Burgunder. And I think we mentioned too, Payenne for Sauvignon Blanc. So a couple of funny naming designations that you might come across on Swiss wine labels. We're going to take a shift down to the United Kingdom. Well, who could say what's going to happen after Brexit? But there's two PDOs, England and Wales. England has a sub-PDO known as Darnebel. These are still dry whites from Bacchus, and they're screw cap only. Here you'll find sparkling and still wine, 49 approved varieties. Sparkling wine law basically follows Cremant rules with 3.5 bars minimum pressure. And then there's Welsh wine PDO. It's basically the same as England, allowing for still and sparkling wines. Great producers to know, of course, Haddingly Valley, Nye Timber, Ridgeview, and Chapel Down. I think it's important, this didn't come out nearly as well as I wanted it to take a look at the wine regions of England. You see all here on the southern side. Of course, Wales to the west, and then Scotland up here in the north. We're not going to talk a whole lot about Scottish wines or Irish wines. They happen to drink other things in those regions, but in England, they drink a lot of sparkling wine. They produce some, and the best ones really probably come from Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex, and Kent. And Kent is home to a famous area known as the White Cliffs of Dover. I'll show that to you here. It's a little more remote if you're visiting London to get there, but certainly probably worth your time to get there. Here are the wine regions of the UK and the Southwest. You can see Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, Dorset, and Wiltshire. And then, of course, Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex, and Kent that we looked at. And then up to the northeast, you'll find East Anglia for Norfolk and Suffolk. Probably not nearly as important. I would focus my studies right here, Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex, and Kent. And that's kind of my show for today. I hope that wasn't too terribly fast, but I hope it also helped you gain some perspective on the regions of Austria, Switzerland, and the UK. You can do some deeper studying now based off of this presentation. Feel free to share these. Of course, I put these on YouTube, so share them with your staff. You can always shoot them a link and tell them, hey, we have a quiz on Austria this Wednesday. Other than that, I will catch up with you all next week. We'll take a look at the syllabus. I would say study up a little bit and be ready for another great show. Cheers, gang.